because I worked in the literary world, like works by Black people that were specifically about Black politics tend to do better than works that are by Black people that are just about anything, or works that are by Black people that are just about existing like as a Black person, like a story, for instance, that isn't racialized in that regard. And like you see the odd thing here and there, like what's her name again? The girl who does Insecure. That's just Issa Rae. That's just a show about Black people. It's a show that happens to have Black people in it, and they're just living their lives, having relationships, it's not this like hyper racialized narrative. It's still a window into Black life, but in a way that it's like any other story. You're getting into it because of the characters and because of whereas something like Dear White People is like the complete opposite of that, because it's like, we're gonna tell you about this thing, and it's just like, it's very like,
or Black Panther.
I think
Black Panther.
Like, but as an actual African, I was very offended.
Forever, I don't remember.
I was so offended by like the trope, like that movie, like as somebody who's like actually from Africa, and like most of the actors were like doing this like really miscellaneous African accent.
You're saying that the accents in that movie aren't real?
Also, the villain in the movie was right. Like, they had me rooting for the villain.
Right.
Not only was the villain right, he was also more attractive.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not a good idea to have in a movie.
It was like romanticized, like what's it called, like African, Pan-African sort of like Hotep-ism vision of like this sort of past that was lost, marrying into a future that like could be. And I mean, there are some cool elements of Afrofuturism that I really like enjoy, but there's also like this sort of pernicious aspect of it that's sort of about us, basically doing and achieving all of the same things white people have done and achieved. And it's not about us as a people just flourishing and just being happy and living our lives and like doing our thing. Like, that isn't attractive to the narrative that's being espoused now. It's all about making us racialized subjects.
Well,
basically.
See, here's the problem, is that they allowed Black Lives Matter to become Black Lives Better.
Well, I can think of one example where it is a story that it's not specifically around race, but I mean, it wouldn't happen. It couldn't happen in any other way. That would be Atlanta. Like, that is a story about this young Black man trying to like struggle and like have this like strange relationship with this woman and have a kid, and like all of the kind of things that come along with being in 21st century America, trying to like all of this stuff. I think that it kind of, that's another good example of a way you could make a narrative that is, race is very integral to it, but it's not flaunted in your face as like Dear White People or some fucking obnoxious way. It's naturally put just through a good story that you're invested in, through high stakes and like all of this stuff that makes a good story. It doesn't have to the thing about the good story doesn't have to be the fucking racial element of it or any of the whatever woke part of it you're trying to include.
I love that Atlanta, because that racial tension is present. It's ever present. There's even an episode where he goes and is in this like white frat house, and like it's like the juxtaposition of like them being these racists, but then they're like singing rap music and like singing the N-word, or the one where he goes or Teddy Perkins, the Michael Jackson character in there, or the fucking weird when the mom marries the white guy who's like into all of the weird African shit, and they have like a slave party where they have like Black people serving them as slaves and shit. Like the racial tension.
They're washing their feet and apologizing.
Literally, he like the racial element, but that's why I love Atlanta, because it's basically like they were calling it like a Twin Peaks but for rappers. It's like surreal, it's weird, those elements are all up in there for sure, but at the same time it's a story and you're getting invested in a story with decent characters. It's not just like, oh, look at us, aren't we special? Exactly. And like I feel like Wakanda was sort of like a look at us, if only things were different, we would have this really high technological, like the whole premise of the film is like, what if there was a space in Africa that wasn't colonized and they so happened to have this amazing alien technology that allowed them to advance, and the fact that they kind of let the rest of Africa suffer, they let the rest of Africa follow
Terry
the
Crews is
colonialism.
criticizing Black Panther.
Like,
This is Terry
they let
Crews'
the rest
criticism.
of Africa suffer, and they kept themselves insular, and they have like a monarchy and like all of this like weird like Hotep shit, and like, you know, I don't know.
Nancy Pelosi's there.
That's it, wearing a kente cloth, kneeling. she goes there annually to
She's
like
the only
kneel.
white person there.
It's weird because there's so
And
much.
she also happens to be the leader.
Yeah, she leads.
Yeah, the Black Panther curse is that you have to marry white Nancy Pelosi.
Oh my god.
Hotep Nancy Pelosi.
You get the fucking costume. You do. You get to fight. You fight all the crime. You get to do all the cool stuff. But Nancy Pelosi in a kente cloth.
Oh no.
That's your destiny.
Oh no, gross. But yeah, I mean, it's weird though because there's so much like good black art that comes out of black individuals just expressing themselves and their thoughts and their ideas and their observations about the world. And it seems as if the space for that is being eroded by wokeness, if you know what I mean. It's like all of these different
Wokeness as a lifestyle brand.
Lifestyle brand. And like it's like all of these different institutions that control what art becomes popular or control what art is seen by the public have now basically been like, we'll give you the pedestal, we'll give you the platform, so long as it's like you're performing blackness and wokeness for us, basically. If you're just a black person that so happens to enjoy this or that, then you're useless to our mode. And I feel a lot of that in what I do, for sure.
With, like, projects regarding black people, it always seems to be geared around what white liberals want to see, and that's stories where black people are suffering. Because like if you actually look through, like, I mean, think about the amount of people in the world that are considered black and all of those cultures and all of the lore associated with those cultures. I mean, even the other day I found out that there was a black samurai, like literally like a famous black samurai.
Why the fuck is that not a
there's-
fucking movie?
And it's not a movie because he was upheld and he was seen as like basically this, like the Japanese, like they thought he was awesome. They like, and that is why
Big shit. Fucking.
yeah, like, and that's why stuff like that doesn't get funded because white liberals don't want to sit and see a movie where like
An empowered
just
black
people
person.
yeah. Like something which is just like
It's the struggle.
it
has to be the struggle.
But they came after Tarantino for Django Unchained precisely because of that. Like, I don't know if you guys remember the backlash that Django Unchained got when it first came out, because it sort of subverted it subverted the idea of the benevolent white in the sense that Christoph Waltz was pretty self-interested. He wanted someone to come bounty hunt with him, basically. He wasn't this benevolent, and he grew to kind of like him, and they formed this sort of solidarity with one another. But Django always had an agenda, which was his freedom, and he also was incredibly competent motherfucker. And the whole film was like his arc about his road to empowerment, and they didn't like it as much as let's say they like something like 12 Years a Slave, which had like an incredibly tragic ending,
or The Help.
Yeah, or The Help, or any or Precious, which is I think the worst atrocity that ever happened.
Driving Miss Daisy, whatever it's called.
Someone and the thing is, people like Lee Daniels and like Tyler Perry have gamed this because they know that there are a certain population of the black community that like this sort of thing, but they also know that white liberals also like this sort of thing, so they've really gamed it in that regard.
And there's like never a celebration of the off the wall shit either. Like there was a film released a couple of years ago called Kuzo, by a company called Brainfeeder, which was produced and directed, I think also written by Flying Lotus, and has Thundercat, George Clinton, like a shitload of fucking really cool black people, and just like amazing fucking cast of comedians and all sorts of Tim Heidecker's in it, like all sorts of weird stuff. But it is a really grotesque.
Great white people like Tim Heidecker.
Yeah, many great white people like
There's
Tim
a lot of
Heidecker.
important actors in it, most of which is Tim Heidecker, the white man.
Yeah.
is Nigerian.
Tim Heidecker is
It's Tim Heidecker in blackface.
is known Haitian Tim Heidecker was also in it. but it was a fucking weird, crazy, fucking like psychedelic, bad acid trip fucking movie. Like it was really off, like Jodorowsky level, fucking like off the wall, psychedelic, mad shit, crazy, cool fucking film. But then you do not get to see fucking black people get to make films like that, which was the fucking coolest thing. So like, and I getting to see Flying Lotus like do some interviews and talk about that process and just sort of like, this is the sort of films that I don't see fucking representation in. Why is it always the white people that get to go and do all the
You could
whack
extend
shit?
that to Sorry to Bother You, because that is a film that is in every way unlikely.
Yeah.
There's nothing about that film. The fact that it got wide release, the fact like there's nothing about it
There's a
that
handful.
is like normal.
There's like a handful of stuff. Like Jordan Peele, definitely.
Oh, yeah.
Is somebody who you've been
He's
able.
definitely the most successful
Yeah.
doing that thing.
Yeah, basically that isn't there is not like it's not like essentialized or like racialized. It's fun. It's creative expression.
But what's,
you know,
what's horrible to think about is thinking about the fact that if Jordan Peele had not had like built up his own brand before making and like coming up with those ideas and pitching them, would they have ever been made?
No, absolutely not.
Because those movies are they're anti-liberal.
Us
And they're-
particularly.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I watch Tiger Belly. It was like one of my favorite podcasts, and Bobby Lee is like a comedian. He actually came up on Mad TV with Jordan Peele, so he talks about like all of these old stories that they had together, like when they had no money, fucking like sharing cab rides and shit back from like the studio filming sketches and stuff. And he literally said the same thing. Like no one knew that Jordan had that in him. Like nobody, like he didn't go around fucking like telling people like, oh yeah, I'm writing something, this and that. But it's always super underplayed and super quiet. But as soon as you give someone that opportunity, look how he's fucking like gone at it and shone. Like the amount of fucking movies and stories and shit that guy's producing now that are just a fucking top-notch quality.
Well, even just the third term Obama meme that he gave us. I mean, that's the best.